What up, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of the Nerd Gen Report. I'm your host, Pablo, and joining me, as always, is Mr. Brian Schultz. Brian, episode number 8 for Daredevil, season, 4? Born Again. This episode has, I would say, elevated the positive reactions to Daredevil. I'll keep on saying this, this show has been fantastic for me without Daredevil in it. And it's because of certain things, which I believe, based on the latest headlines about what we'll expect for episode 9, there'll be a lot more practical stuff happening. So we may not get the CGI that I've been complaining about, and a lot of people have also been complaining about as well. Brian, what do you think about episode 9?
So I think this episode, in some ways, to me, is our first real marker for what Daredevil will be. I think if you know the production history of Born Again, you know that episodes 2 through 7 contain all of the footage that was shot prior to Kevin's intervention to restart the show. Now, they didn't either have the budget or the time to totally reshoot from the very beginning. So they've been cutting and splicing most of the past 7 weeks. This was the first episode where you have Benson and Moorhead, who did Moon Knight, and will be doing almost all of the future episodes, so 9 plus season 2. They did do the pilot, but I don't totally give them. I feel like the pilot was probably more constraining because of what's in episodes 2 through 7. So they're kind of back piecing together a new pilot that makes sense, or they thought would make sense. Whereas episode 8 is much more of a continuity. It's much more like, okay, we're going forward with the narrative in the directions we want to. I think you can feel that personally. I think visually this episode feels more cohesive. I think narratively it feels more propulsive. Like everyone we spend time with, there's something happening of note. And I don't think it's a coincidence, as we've been talking about, that a lot of that time involves the characters that came over from Netflix, right? Reintroducing Bullseye and seeing where his story starts to move forward, including the confrontation in the jail and the escape. Like, that's good stuff. Like Vanessa and Fisk's relationship progressed to a new level, and what that means, that's good stuff. And then, of course, as you said, Matt, and emphasis Matt, because he's not in the suit again, showing kind of some range in that role, I think works pretty well. I would say, to your point, the thing that this episode doesn't test itself on and really lacks is just Daredevil in the suit. And so Benson and Moorhead's only action scene to date has been the one we've criticized pretty heavily, which is the Bullseye CGI fight scene in the premiere. So that remains to be seen if they can deliver with the Netflix choreography a truly epic Daredevil fight in the finale, which I assume they're going to try to do. But overall, like, I think this episode gives me hope for season 2. I've kind of felt like that's where we were headed. And I feel like if this is how they're going to shoot and block season 2, I think season 2 will be a pretty big step up from season 1.
What were some of your favorite scenes of this episode?
Well, I liked the Vanessa Fisk stuff. I got to be honest. I really like their dynamics since the time they met in season 1 has always been this like train wreck of I can't look away, but I know this is horrible and neither of these people is good. And like, but I like this. We're going to move to this place of she is not on equal footing with him, but is much more partner and sort of forcing her way into this partnership as Kingpin. So I think I did get the thing right from last week, that she was not aware that he had imprisoned her lover. But her reaction to that is amazing. And he said, I kept my promise. He literally said, I kept my promise. And then she winds up, spoiler alert, crossing that line, which I think is significant because it's like he doesn't cross the line, right? He stayed within the code that she set for him. She's the one who actually broke the rules, which I think is the theme of this episode. Because we find out, big spoiler, big story. And by the way, thanks to finally going back to the storyline we really care about in this season, right? Which is like what happened to Foggy, what happened to Bullseye, what's going on with our key characters, right? So we find out in a bit of, I think, a very smart twist. It's Vanessa who put the hit out on Foggy, not Kingpin. And I think that's such a parallel to Kingpin not killing the lover, but Vanessa doing it. As we said, Kingpin is a twisted dude and he's an evil dude, but he does have a code. There's things he doesn't cross because he somehow in his mind thinks that that's how you're supposed to go about this. Whereas Vanessa is kind of making it clear that she doesn't have any lines. Like she just will do whatever. And I think like,
what code would Kingpin have other than him reaching his limits in terms of what he can take as far as disrespect before he goes nutso on somebody? You know what I'm saying?
So weirdly though, I think dating back to the Netflix show, his Achilles heel has always been Vanessa, right? He doesn't, whenever Matt threatens her or takes action against her, like to deport her like he does in season 1, Kingpin that's when he loses his cool, right? He becomes apoplectic and he starts to do things that he's not. So I think weirdly, he would not have actually gone after Foggy for the same reason. I think he would have said, like, if I go after Foggy, Daredevil is going to come for Vanessa. Like, that line's been crossed. Now, weirdly, he never felt that way about Karen because we know he tried to kill Karen in the Netflix show. But I think with Foggy, he was like, that's Daredevil's boy. I won't touch him. I'll go after everything else. And I'll try to kill Daredevil himself. So now I think this whole subplot of like Vanessa put the hit out on Matt's best friend. Kingpin doesn't know that. But now Vanessa has invited Daredevil to basically take a straight line at all of them. I think that's actually really cool because it's something that Kingpin will actually not be happy about when he finds out.
We got to get to this, Brian. I don't know if you want to get to it now, but it's just, they realize these are two important people in their lives that you just can't do nothing. You just can't mess with them. And this is what I'm thinking about. I can't get it out of my head. I'm trying to understand. I mean, yes, it calls back to what Poindexter said to him when he was with Matt in terms of being a hero involves saving your worst enemy. I think that was the line. And he does it with Kingpin. Mm-hmm. Right? We actually see that happening. Trying to understand, did he save Kingpin or did he save whoever? What was your thoughts with that scene?
My reaction is he's saving his own conscience. Right. This Matt is still like that was Catholic guilt. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, because this Matt is still wrestling, right? And we're kind of starting to make jokes about it. He always does the scream now every episode when he's angry. That's like a once a week take a drink moment when he does the scream. But he's clearly dealing with kind of his own code, right? I've set these rules up for myself dating back to the very beginning, but like I so want to cross them with so many people now. And like, how do I do that? And I did cross it with Bullseye, but then he miraculously survived because of, the metal that was in his body, all that sort of stuff. I think it's because he views it as Bullseye escaped because he lost his cool, right? If you think about the domino effect, it's there. Bullseye gets him in the room, riles him up. He bashes his head against the desk. That's what dislodges the tooth. The tooth is what allows Bullseye to escape from the prison. So Matt indirectly is an accomplice to his escape. And I think that's why he saves Kingpin, not because of Kingpin, but because he realizes this guy is going to commit a murder that is on his hands. He should still be in the jail, if not for his own failure. That's why he does it. But of course, that will lead to, we're in this whole, Spider-Man pointing at each other part of this story where like everyone knows something the other doesn't. But we know as the audience, dramatic irony, we know all of it.
Yeah.
So I actually think it works. Because we've even seen in the premiere when they sit down in the Heat Niner scene, that's where I also say like about the code, right? Where Kingpin's like, it's not altogether awful to see you again, right? There's that sort of there's some level I respect what you do.
To come after me, that takes balls, and I respect.
Right, with nothing but your hands and feet, right? Like you don't, yeah. Or every once in a while with the law itself, but like, yeah, he's like, you don't have an army. He's like, you don't have billions of dollars. He's like, you're just a dude on the street. Like there's a grudging sort of like, you're almost as crazy and twisted as I am. You just point it in a different direction. Yeah. And so I think there's going to be something to that. I'm fascinated to see how Fisk reacts to that act coming out of nowhere, given their history.
Yes. I'm interested in seeing that acknowledgement. Again, it'll level up his respect and I guess somewhat admiration to him for doing something like that.
Well, I actually think in a weird way, Fisk might perceive himself to be in Matt's debt on some level for something. And so obviously Matt has the important piece of knowledge of like, no, Vanessa's actually been the true architect. And you don't even know the stuff she did running your organization while you were away. But I do think Kingpin's going to offer something. I don't know what that is, but give him a pass on something or help him with something. I don't know what that's going to be, but I just have this feeling like that's how he's going to look at it.
I mean, I don't think Kingpin is going to jail or nothing after this episode. I think he's going to continue being mayor, and he is going to perhaps soften somewhat to Matt and whatever his needs are in whatever conversation that they have in this episode coming up. Because again, you said they have to share that screen again for this final episode. What will that conversation be? Will it be that sort of I'm in debt to you sort of conversation and understanding? Fisk is going to ask him, perhaps, why? And that's going to be a very interesting sort of thing to see what results we get from that conversation.
Yeah, I agree. It does call into question. We do presume we'll see Daredevil in the suit fighting in the finale, but I guess now would the most likely fight would be a rematch with Bullseye, because now I don't see the grounds for him to fight Kingpin on any level after what just happened. That clearly makes no sense, right? There's no sense for them to come to blows in the next episode.
Because here's the thing, Bullseye's a dangerous dude.
But there's also no one else out there to provide a physical, right? So it's like, we have not set up Punisher head-to-head with Daredevil. The cops, I think he does have to fight some of these twisted cops. That would make some sense. Some of the guys he roughed up in the apartment, he would probably have to fight more of them at some point. But does it make sense for him to fight cops right now? He just took a bullet for the mayor. Why would crooked cops be coming for him right this second? So that doesn't make much sense. So Bullseye feels like the only guy that would be an interesting fight to watch again now. But I don't know. So I'm trying to figure that out in my head, because they've said it's going to be really dark and really brutal in the finale and that sort of thing. And I'm just sort of trying to think about like how you get Matt or Daredevil to that place. Because I mean, Muse is not coming back in the finale yet. I don't think so. And he's not a good enough fighter for it to be like, well, unless he comes back already and he has the imperceptibility. But I don't think that's this season. Yeah.
Yeah. I would have loved to see a scene with Bullseye with General Pop and them getting at him, or somebody's gonna talk to him and they're gonna ask him, so what'd you do to get in here? And he tells him, and then they leave him alone. I would have loved to see that scene of, with that interaction, because he was turning, he started getting focused because of how they presented his perception when he gets into that mode, which was dope. I like that.
Yeah, so they said for him, blue is the trigger color. That's what we were like.
Yeah.
You know what's funny was I don't think they meant it this way, but do you remember in the Affleck Daredevil how he used to quote unquote see, and that was also blue? Do you remember that? It was like he saw the world as like a blue series of sensations, and that's how they would show that in that movie. This actually looked like pretty similar to that, and I was like, I don't think they mean to do that, but it's reminding me of that. So
perhaps this is the iteration from the comics that some hint of the comics that, because they did some great callbacks to the comics with the tooth thing and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Tooth thing was very cool. Yeah, the blue, the buzzing which they've done, and Netflix did the buzzing too, that like the audio. So like it, yeah. So, and they said he's back in season 2 as well. So this is not a fight that will lead to death. This is not a fight. So my guess is this: if Daredevil beats him, it will be to get him back in prison again. But I kind of have a feeling Bullseye might escape. I kind of have a feeling the way this season has gone, everything is about getting people into the field. So I'm almost thinking he gets out of this. Whatever the fight is, they both walk away from it, or I don't know, survive it, I guess. And nothing is resolved. Swordsman. They keep dropping Duquesne into these episodes without having him really do anything, but they finally referred to Swordsman. I guess they showed him on the camcorder briefly. But like we haven't seen Swordsman be Swordsman. You want to see Swordsman be Swordsman in the finale, or save that for season 2?
I would save that for season 2. Who knows if Swordsman gets involved in Daredevil's fights? If he's fighting multiple people and he needs that backup, I don't know. I would hate for this episode to, like, you know, whoever is going to deliver the killing blow or whatever to Daredevil, and you get a shot from Punisher getting a guy. I wouldn't want to see that sort of involvement as a cameo kind of thing. I didn't like too much that cameo scene he had in Daredevil season 2 at the end. You know, it was whatever.
Oh, you mean Punisher in the finale?
Yeah.
Oh, you didn't like that?
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah,
I like that. I like the fact that he takes him out on the rooftop. He doesn't even know. The thing I like about that scene, he doesn't even know anything about what's going on, and he just starts picking off dudes right and left. That's the thing I like about the Punisher. He's like, "What?" He's like, "Okay." He's like, "I'm gonna go with red on this one," and he starts shooting everyone out.
I trust his judgment.
But you know, you're right. There is a little bit of there's definitely some team up potential here, right? At some point, because it's like, oh, Daredevil, Punisher, Swordsman, like the vigilantes that they're putting on the board. We all know kind of ultimately at some point end up on the same side, and I think he would do it. That also begs the question of, you know, would Renner ever make an appearance at some point along the way? If I mean, I don't think this is the right series or setting for Haley Steinfeld to pop in. But but Renner's connection to Swordsman as his mentor, right, through the comics and through his own TV show, not impossible.
Was there?
Yeah, I think in the comics, Swordsman was one of his trainers.
No, in the comics, yes, in the comics, yes, but on the show, I don't believe they made.
They never made that connection between them on the show. They just crossed paths. That's all.
Yeah.
Because of Kate Bishop, they crossed paths. They didn't cross paths because of his own history. But I'm just saying, so I don't know if that would ever lead to hey, we're going to put these guys on screen, and Renner adds a little star power to it in sort of a quasi mini localized Avengers type of deal. So it definitely feels like they want to get there, but we'll see it.
Yeah. You think, I mean, obviously the new deputy mayor, obviously he's being set up. I'm interested in seeing, and perhaps they'll save this for season 2, because you sort of forgot because of this event, that happened in episode 9. You sort of, everyone is sort of interested in seeing where this goes now, right? Between Kingpin and Daredevil, and these secrets that Vanessa has, whether or not he's going to find out. I want to see what sort of conversation they're going to have about that. And can he trust her now?
Well, clearly the answer is no. And I think this is why I think if we go down the list of like what has Born Again successfully added to the legacy of this show that we want to see, this is number one. I think it's number one for me. It's the new dynamic of Vanessa and Kingpin. To me, is the thing that I am just like fascinated, because it can go all sorts of ways. It may bring Kingpin briefly aligned with Daredevil. Like, that's what makes it interesting, even though we know how they ultimately end up. That's what makes some of these shows work. So I think he does find out, and I think he finds out. If he doesn't find out in the finale, something will at least give him like a question. They go form a question of how. So I think that's pretty awesome. I will say, you were talking about the depth. We talked about Michael Gandolfini, when you were talking about the depth.
Yeah.
So he's the other thing this show has added. He's the one supporting character I feel like was successful this season because he had an arc. He had something to do. He's played well. Like he's part sniveling, part suck up, but also part sinister. I don't know that I don't know that BB's been given enough to do to where I'm like, this character's great, especially because Vonnie Curtis Hall was so good as Ben. But I at least like this dynamic enough to want to know where it goes, because now he's in a position of influence with regard to PR and communications, and she's obviously sort of like one of his friends or what I don't know, confidants on the in the press. So I actually give the show a thumbs up for getting us to this point where I'm sort of like, next season that back and forth is going to be interesting, because I assume at some point he's going to try to kill her, just like Kingpin tried to kill her old man. I think of all, I wish they would actually, if they want Cherry and Glenn and McDuffie to really matter to this show, I would hope they give them a little more like they gave Daniel Blake, because I think Blake wound up being more interesting by the end of the season than any of them did.
Because I like the way, because I'm noticing all these things from Kingpin, which is he's doing stuff without him doing it, which was the case before. He just, like, very rarely did he put his hands on someone outside of it being like very personal to him, right? Very personal.
And very private.
Yes. It's only between him and that person, and that's it. But all the stuff that's been happening around him, it's him just having dinner, dudes getting shot behind them, and you know what I'm saying, him having conversations with people, showing them pictures and stuff. He's doing stuff without actually doing stuff. You know what I'm saying? And I'm interested in seeing, and I'm hoping that perhaps they don't bookend it now with Gandolfini's character, right? And live up to that quote of I will burn for you, right? And that perhaps will be carried into season 2, allowing Kingpin to continue his in that position, so it'll be interesting to see the sort of stuff that's happening around him, and nobody can prove nothing because I ain't do nothing. I ain't do it. Nobody can prove otherwise. He has his fall guys. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes. But hopefully they don't address some of it or a lot of it in this final episode.
I don't think so. I don't think they would promote Gandolfini to then take him off the board in one episode. That is clearly like his role for next season. Mm-hmm. I think to your point about Kingpin doing versus not doing, yeah, I think part of the mastery, especially of season 1, is how little he's actually in it. It's really Wesley who's doing the legwork, and it's the partners, right? It's Madame Gao and Nobu. It's the partners who are kind of almost showing you Kingpin's character without him actually being there. And then he starts to show up later in the season himself. Whereas season 3 was much more, he's the focal point, but he's really only inside the one building, right? He almost rarely, if ever, leaves the hotel because of the house arrest that's not house arrest. So that one, like, you actually see him physically more orchestrating. But I agree, if he's not gonna be tossed out of the mayor's office in a couple of months, which is basically what this season has been. He's going to serve out. My guess is he would serve out multiple terms. Like, he would be smart enough to get reelected. And like in New York City, I don't think you have a term limit on mayor. So you can, in real life. So I think technically, like, Kingpin could be mayor for like 12 years if he was smart enough, 16 years if he was smart enough to do it, which he would be. So I fully expect he will, it will always lead back to someone else. I think the fall person initially is going to be his chief of staff, more likely, because she doesn't get it. She doesn't live that life of crime. She's a liability. So at some point, he's going to put her in the crossfire of something, and that'll be the end of that. And at some point, I wouldn't be surprised if I don't know how visible he'd be willing to make Buck Cashman, but that's really his chief of staff. Being honest.
Yeah. Anything else, Brian?
I will say, so on the humorous side, I think Heather Glenn's best moment of the season is in this episode when she's arguing with Matt, and Matt's trying to be like, well, Daredevil saved you. And she's like, no. She's like, I took care of business. Screw that guy.
Let's. It made me remember that look he gave her after she shot him. And I saw it again.
Exactly. That's her highlight of the season, I think. She's like, I'm all that. I'm the one who pulled the trigger. Yeah. He didn't do anything.
Obviously, they're not gonna agree, and this relationship is over
Yeah.
pretty soon.
That was her Alonzo Harris moment. I run, you just live here.
But here's the thing. I didn't buy almost, and this is just being, funny about how that scene transpired, where he shows up to the party and she's talking to him, and he's listening to other stuff, and she's like, "Oh, you're not even paying attention." He's like, I'm sorry. And then she starts to talk again, and then he does the same thing.
Yeah.
There's no way you go back to that scene and she's not off somewhere mad because he's not listening to her again. He did it again. That is not real life right there. But anyway,
let's be honest. The most frustrating thing of this episode is that we're getting this in episode 8. This is the whole. I really wonder how we're going to look back on this season a couple years from now when we've got season 2 and maybe even a season 3, because for the show they clearly want to tell, how much material of these 8 episodes do you feel was really relevant to that? 3? Like, it's not half. There's not even half of this season that I would say is like truly impactful to where we're going. And that's frustrating.
Which episode was the bank robbery?
5.
That show's looking more filler than anything on earth.
Or a TV.
No, it's not.
That's the thing. It's
just, but it shows a day in the life of Daredevil. If it was 18 episodes, that would have been episode. That would have been one episode in its full right there. That was the episode in their 18 episode series that they tried to do. That was that. They liked it enough to keep it.
Episode 1, they clearly shot last or after the fact to try to create, which is weird, just to try to create table stakes. But like, if we look at this season, what do we really need? We need episode 1 because we need Foggy's death. We need the conversation, Matt dropping Bullseye off the roof. We clearly need episode 4, right? We've talked about that. Could episode 4 have been the premiere? Episode 4 brings us back to, Rabbit in a snowstorm, Matt training. So we need episode 4. We definitely need this episode, and we definitely would have needed last episode as well. So I kind of feel like that's our show. It's like 1, 4, 7, and 8 have the things they really want us to pay attention to going into season 2. And then, as much as I love the Hector Ayala performance, the show hasn't really paid him off. It's like it came and went, and then Angela's on the board. But the legacy of what Hector did, or what it meant to Matt to defend him, like, that's kind of been put to the side, right? That's just kind of been moved over, and it's like, doesn't really matter. So, yeah. And then, as you said, the bank robbery, gets Kamala Khan's dad back in the mix. It's cool to see Matt solving situations as Matt, but you're right. It's just like, is it essential to what this narrative wanted to be? No, it's not. So that's where I feel like season 2 will be much more cohesive, because it'll be all this singular strand of stories they want to tell with the same look and the same feel. But I'm looking at these 8 episodes and I'm kind of like, I don't want to say I wasted my time. That's not fair. This show is better than that. But just the idea that, like, there's half of it that really matters, and then half of it is just sort of, you had it and you didn't want to put it in the recycle bin. But I am excited for the finale. I'm legitimately, like, we've gotten to a point where this show has done enough to where I'm like, yeah, like, I want to see episode 9. I'm not like, oh, is this over yet? Let's wait till season 2.
Again, it's been a slow burn. A really slow burn into figuring out what it is that we're trying to do here. Certainly, this feels like what everybody's been saying in terms of putting together a puzzle piece of episodes and perhaps condensing it based on what you've done, and having someone else do this, and putting it together to tell this story that didn't really look like they belonged together, or didn't just really flow right. And now we're finally getting into this place because of who created it, and what we will be expecting moving, hopefully, in season 2. which could be, something really, something to get excited about, especially if episode 9 hits hard. If it hits hard, are they filming season 2 already, or that's
Already.
been done?
No, already. Not done. Already.
Okay. So yeah, let us know in the comment section below what you guys think of episode 9. Of episode 8, sorry. And hit that like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the Nerd Gen Report.